Broadcasting Corporation.
The time is precisely 6:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by Anjana Dudamgoda and read by Ramesh Piris. The headlines. Pakistan's Defence Secretary calls on the President. The Prime Minister thanks New Zealand envoy for his contributions for strengthening bilateral ties. The government to provide fertilizer for tea cultivation. A penalty up to 50,000 rupees for failing to obtain tax identification number. Legal action against 180 institutions over banned polythene and plastic production. A notice issued on minor change in 2023 A-level exam timetable. In foreign news, apparent Israeli airstrikes kills Hamas deputy leader in Beirut. And in sports, the Niger de Silva named test captain for Afghan series. Now the local news in detail. The outgoing New Zealand High Commissioner Michael Appleton paid a farewell call on Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena at the Temple Trees in Colombo yesterday. He thanked the government for its decision to reopen its embassy in New Zealand shortly. He said Sri Lanka has achieved remarkable recovery to face the COVID-19 challenges and the unprecedented economic crisis. High Commissioner Appleton said that when he arrived in Sri Lanka 3 years ago, the country was reeling under the impact of COVID pandemic and he had to stay in a hotel room under quarantine. Now at the time of his departure, the tourists are arriving in large numbers due to managing the crisis well. He thanked the Prime Minister for the continuous cooperation extended first as the Foreign Minister and then as the Prime Minister during his tenure in Colombo. The Ministry of Agriculture and Plantation Industries has decided to provide the fertilizers required for tea cultivation in Sri Lanka through two state fertilizer companies, Colombo Commercial Fertilizer Company and the Ceylon Fertilizer Company. Until now, the Ceylon Tea Board has given loans to the tea growers to purchase the fertilizers required for tea cultivation from the private sector, and the tea growers had to pay a higher price for that. It was also reported that some tea growers do not use fertilizers and use the money for other purposes. Therefore, Minister of Agriculture and Plantation Industry, Mahinda Amaravira, instructed the Ceylon Tea Board to carry out this decision. The annual fertilizer requirement for tea cultivation in Sri Lanka is 40,000 metric tons. The amount spent for that is about 6,800 million rupees. The Inland Revenue Department says any person who fails to obtain a tax identification number faces a penalty of 50,000 rupees. It is now mandatory for any individual aged 18 years or above or who attains the age of 18 years on or after the 1st of January 2024 to register with the IRD and obtain a tax identification number. Additionally, any person who receives an annual income of over 1.2 million rupees is obliged to pay income tax. The Minister of Finance on Tuesday clarified that having a tax identification number does not automatically imply liability for income tax. Further, a tax identification number is made mandatory for specific activities, including opening a current account, seeking building planning approval, registering a motor vehicle, renewing a license and registering title deeds to land. Members of the public can register for the tax identification number via the e-service by posting or by visiting the IRD. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. And we continue with more local news. The Central Environment Authority says more than 7,000 institutions that produced banned polythene and plastic items were inspected last year. The Deputy Director General of the Waste Management Division of the CEA, Ajit Veerasundara, said that legal action has been taken against more than 180 institutions that have violated the laws related to the matter. Acting Secretary General of Parliament Chaminda Kularatne said the first parliamentary sitting of 2024 is slated to commence on the 9th of January this year. Accordingly, the Parliament is scheduled to meet from the 9th to the 12th of January as per a decision made by the Committee on Parliamentary Business on the 12th of December 2023. And that concludes local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Mahatma.
Moving on to the main news story. Lieutenant General, retired Hamud-uz-Zaman Khan, the Secretary of the Ministry of Defence of Pakistan, called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe at the Presidential Secretariat today. The Pakistan Secretary of Defence is in Sri Lanka to attend the 4th Sri Lanka-Pakistan Bilateral Defence Dialogue at the Defence Headquarters Complex in Sri Jawadanapura Kotte. President Wickremesinghe warmly welcomed the Pakistani Defence Ministry Secretary, engaging in a brief discussion. The meeting was attended by Minister of State for Defence Pramita Bandara Tennakoon, Senior Advisor to the President on National Security and Chief of Presidential Staff Sagala Ratnayaka, as well as Secretary of the Ministry of Defence General Kamal Gunaratne. And that concludes the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Mahatma.
This is Watchlight.
In Watchlight this evening, the Commissioner General of Examinations, Amit Jasundara, urges the students sitting for the upcoming 2023 GCE Advanced Level Examination to pay heed to a minor change made in the timetable. Commenting further regarding the matter, Mr. Jasundara explained that the Department of Examinations had to make a few changes to the A-level examination timetable since the Korean language was added as a new subject. Therefore, all exam applicants are advised not to use the previous exam timetable, he said, pointing out that some websites may display this schedule incorrectly. He also said that the amended timetable is indicated in the examination admission card provided to the applicants for their convenience. And that came to you in Watchlight.
Coming up, World News.
Moving on to the World News Bulletin, and first the headlines. Apparent Israeli strike kills Hamas deputy leader in Beirut. South Korean opposition leader in ICU after knife attack amid calls for stronger security. Fog, cold wave grips North India. 26 trains delayed due to low visibility in Delhi. Now the world news in detail. An apparent Israeli strike in the Lebanese capital of Beirut killed Hamas' number 2 political leader on Tuesday, making a potentially significant escalation of Israel's war against the militant group and heightening the risk of a wider Middle East conflict. Saleh Aruri, who was the most senior Hamas figure killed since the war with Israel began, was also founder of the group's military wing. His death could provoke major retaliation by Lebanon's powerful Hezbollah militia. The strike hit an apartment in a building in the Shiite district of Beirut that is a Hezbollah stronghold, and Hezbollah leader Said Hassan Nasrallah has vowed to strike back against any Israeli targeting of Palestinian officials in Lebanon. South Korea's opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung remained hospitalized in intensive care on Wednesday, a day after a knife attack on him shocked political leaders who were vying for the upper hand in a major election 3 months away. Surgeons operated on Lee for more than 2 hours late on Wednesday to repair a major blood vessel in his neck that was sliced when the assailant lunged and stabbed him with a knife. The act of terror against Chairman Lee Jae-myung was clearly a challenge against democracy and a threat against democracy, Democratic Party floor leader Hong Lee-pyo said at a party leadership council meeting. He urged a speedy investigation and a tough security for high-profile political figures, echoing renewed questions about the safety on campaign trails in a country with a history of political violence despite tight restrictions on gun ownership. Northern India continues to grapple with cold wave and fog conditions causing disruptions in railway services. According to the Indian Railways, approximately 26 trains are running late in the national capital area today due to fog. On Tuesday, also about 26 Delhi-bound trains were delayed by 1 to 6 hours due to fog. The India Meteorological Department took to Platform X and shared the details regarding fog conditions observed in various parts of northern India. Uttar Pradesh's Bahraik and Gorkhapur recorded the lowest visibility at 25 meters, while that in Delhi stood at 500 meters and 600 meters respectively. Back to the headlines of the world news. Apparent Israeli strike kills Hamas deputy leader in Beirut. South Korean opposition leader in ICU after knife attack amid calls for stronger security. And fog and cold wave grips northern India. 26 trains delayed due to low visibility in Delhi. And that concludes the world news. Moving on to the developer news. 2 investors have positively responded to invest over $100 million in the Colombo Port City, and the cabinet approval has been granted to them as a primary business of strategic importance. The first proposal has been submitted by Asiri Port City Hospital Private Company to implement a project to develop a hospital in the port city of Colombo under an investment of $100 million. The project qualifies for exemptions or incentives under Section 2B of Colombo Port City Guidelines on the grant of exemptions or incentives to businesses of strategic importance, Regulations number 2 of 2023. And that was Development News.
Moving on with sports news.
In sports, it's cricket. Sri Lankan all-rounder Dhananjaya De Silva has been named as the Test captain for Sri Lanka's upcoming series against Afghanistan, while Kusal Mendes has been appointed as the vice-captain. Accordingly, De Silva will serve as the captain for the one-off Test match against Afghanistan, which is part of the home series, which will be held during January and February. The series, which will be played on the heels of Zimbabwe's tour of Sri Lanka, will consist of 1 Test match, 3 ODIs and 3 T20 matches. And that was sports news.
Go ekatiyana youth ekata life eke change ekata niyameta setna aswagena dekapuina habekarana youth ekata niyameta setna friendship ekamenna.
The all-new NSB Itru account, NSB IAM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
In business news, Sicilian Tea Factory has recorded the highest sale of over 3.8 million kilograms in 2023 at the Colombo Tea Auction. Managed by Sicilian Associates Private Limited and located in Kalawana, the tea factory is a leading producer of orthodox and CTC black tea. With an annual average production exceeding 3 million kilograms for over a decade and the contribution of 1.5% of total national production in 2023 is a remarkable achievement for a privately owned single tea factory. Sicilian was established in 1930 as one of the oldest tea factories producing orthodox tea, and manufacturing CTC was introduced in 1993. With the increased capacity, more smallholders were able to join with Sicilian, making the number of current registered smallholders and green leaf suppliers nearing 10,500. And that was Business News.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekatiyana youth ekata life eke change ekata niyameta setna aswagena dekapuina habekarana youth ekata niyameta setna friendship ekamenna.
The all-new NSB Itru account, NSB IAM, a plan for your dream.
Moving on to economic news. State Minister of Finance Shehan Simhasinghe said that the maintenance of inflation within single digits has been pivotal in fostering business confidence, especially considering the reduction from 70% in 2022 to an anticipated 5% in 2024. During a press conference at the Presidential Media Center themed Collective Path to a Stable Country held on Monday, the State Minister disclosed that the state revenue accounted for 11.2% of the gross domestic product in 2023, with projections indicating an anticipated increase to 15% by the year 2026. And that was economic news.
Weather report.
And finally, we move on to the weather report. Further showers will occur in the eastern, central and Uva provinces. Showers or thunder showers will occur at several places in the western and Sabaragama provinces and in the Gaul and Matara districts tonight. Misty conditions can be expected at some places in the western, Sabaragama and central provinces during the morning. And that was the weather report. And to end this news broadcast, a recap of the main news headlines. Pakistan's Defence Secretary calls on the President. The Prime Minister thanks New Zealand envoy for his contributions for strengthening bilateral ties. The government to provide fertilizer for tea cultivation. A penalty up to 50,000 rupees for failing to obtain tax identification number. Legal action against 180 institutions over banned polythene and plastic production. A notice issued on minor change in 2023 A-level exam timetable. In news overseas, apparent Israeli strike kills Hamas deputy leader in Beirut. And in sports, it's cricket. Dhananjay De Silva named test captain for Afghan series. And with that, we conclude this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.